These are all the books that I read in... No! It's time for the monthly reading wrap up. Oh my god, I didn't welcome you. Welcome back. It's been a while. So, these... Oh my god, no! These are all the books that I read in... My Shayla. Where's these now? I had them in order and everything. The thing is, as well, this is like the normal amount that I usually read. I think there's 10 books here. I also read one on my Kindle, so 11 books in total. But because these are fat books, like I read Kingdom of Ash this month, and that is 1,000 pages. So I did actually read more this month, because I have no life. Oh, actually, I DNF one of them, so yeah, 10. Okay, let's try this again. I have to make a thumbnail anyway, so I need these to stay upright. Okay, I've tried doing these in order, but I don't think it's going to be 100% accurate. Okay, so we started off with Imagine Me, which is the last book in the Shatter Me series. Well, it's the last full book. I'm just going to move this down a bit. There we go. It's the last full book. It ends on a novella, which is really strange. This, I think I gave either 4 or 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this series as a whole. It was probably the easiest fantasy I've ever read. And I think if you want to get into fantasy, then definitely read this series. I always struggle with these wrap-ups when it comes to the books that I read at the start of the month, because I've already forgotten what happens. My memory is honestly horrific. The only thing I will say is Aaron Warner is still not up there with one of my... I don't think he's even top 10 book boyfriends. Like, he's fine, and I do really like him, but I'm sorry, in my opinion, he's nothing special. But the story itself was really, really good. And then the last book in this series, which is the novella, is Believe Me. This is only little. This, I think I may have given a 3.5. It was cute. There was nothing wrong with it. It's meant to be like a wedding special, which is so funny because you don't actually see the wedding. So what's that about? To be honest, I think it could have left here. This was a bit unnecessary in my opinion, but like I said, it was cute. I didn't hate it. I did actually like it, but it was just kind of like... I felt like I was waiting for something to happen. But obviously nothing happened. It was just a cute little finisher. A wedding special with no wedding. So yeah. Shatter Me series completed. This was the one I DNF'd. I got to 25%. This is Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. I felt like I can't really judge this because the only reason I DNF'd it was the fact that I was just bored. I also read on someone's TikTok review that he punches a wall. I really don't care to read about that. I don't care what circumstance it was in. It's just ick. I gave it 2 stars, and yes, I still rate my DNFs unless it's very early on. But I'd say if it's anything over kind of like the 15% mark, maybe even 10. No, 15. I feel like I've got a good enough grasp to kind of judge it a little bit. And 2 stars for me basically means it's not for me. It wasn't my type of vibe, but I wouldn't like stop... Not that I would stop anyone else from reading it, because I wouldn't stop anyone from reading any book. But do you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't say to someone like, oh, don't read this, it's awful, because I didn't give it like a good enough chance to actually judge it. But I was just bored. It was basically Chloe, is that her name? And Warren. They've basically got to get custody of their 2 siblings, to keep it brief. And the only way that they can do that, basically, because they're not making enough money, they join this program where they've basically got to live together. And that's basically as far as I got. They moved in together, and he was just like, I'm all for kind of like people bickering at each other, but he was like actually just a knob, and it kind of annoyed me. Like, that's fine in fantasy, but in a rom-com, I'm kind of like, you're a bit of a dick. And then I heard that he punches the wall, and then I was like, right, that's final. That's final. So yeah, I gave that 2 stars. I probably won't ever be picking it back up. I'm very fussy with contemporary romance. I feel like it has to be very deep and meaningful, and I have to feel that from the get-go, and I didn't feel that with this. Like, it felt very kind of, not surface level, but I felt like there wasn't going to be a lot to it. Again, I might be wrong. If you're watching this and thinking, oh my god, I actually really like this book, I love it, I love that for you, but I'm all for DNF in books. If I'm not hooked from the start, and like I said, I got to the 15%, I can't remember what page that was, and I felt the kind of vibes where I was like, no, I'm not loving this, but I kept going, I kept trying, but I got to that 25% mark, and yeah, I decided that was enough. So 2 stars for that one. Also mark my DNFs as read on Goodreads, because to me, that's me done with the book. Do you know what I mean? So I haven't read it fully to the end, but if I've DNF'd it, that's me done. So I rate it as read on Goodreads. It's not that deep. Okay, it's not that deep. I also like doing that on Goodreads because then I can look through the books that I've read. I'm trying to explain this. Like, if I don't mark it as read, it will still be a book that I haven't read. So someone could be like, oh, have you read this book? And then I'll have to say, yeah, I have, but I DNF'd it. I'm not explaining this very well. Basically, if I've tried reading it, I don't like it, I won't be carrying on reading it, then I will mark it as read because I'm done with the book. So after reading this book, I felt kind of like the next book that I pick up has to be incredible, otherwise I'm going to go into a reading slump. So I decided to do a reread of Wild Love. I actually started tabbing these as well. It was only like halfway through that I started tabbing, so there's not actually a lot on there. If I reread this for the third time, then I think there'll be a lot more tabs because, yeah, I only started halfway through. But I thought I'd give tabbing a go. I've never tabbed before. I just didn't think it was... I don't know, I just didn't really care to. But as I was going through, and even now, I keep picking it up and looking at the stuff that I've tabbed, and it just makes me giggle. Because Wildside is coming out. Oh, I can't remember what fucking day we are. It's coming out on the 4th of March, basically. So I wanted to do a reread to make sure that everything's fresh in my brain. I gave this a 4 the first time I read it, I think. I changed it to a 4.5. I loved it 10 times more the second time round. I will love anything that is small town. And Ford Grant, that's him, by the way. His name's Ford. He is, oh my God. He is up there with one of my favourite book boyfriends. He pines for her for 10 years. 10 years. And you can feel that in the book. So that was absolutely sensational. I never know what kind of stops me from giving books 5 stars because there's nothing I would do to change this. It's just like a feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like 4.5 stars is like absolute perfection, nothing I would change, like incredible, but 5 stars is like the feeling you get. That's the only way I can describe 5 stars to me. So yeah, I just didn't get that feeling, but I still absolutely loved it, wouldn't change a thing about it, and it made me laugh. 10 out of 10, we'll definitely keep rereading this. I then moved on to Wild Eyes. Now, listen to this. So when I first read this, I gave it 2.5 stars. I really was not keen on it. There were some bits where I was like, I thought it was all right. That's why I gave it 2.5, because 2.5 is the middle, isn't it? That's how I see it anyway. It's between 0 and 5. So it was just like, okay, it was fine. Wasn't the best. 2.5 was actually generous, to be honest, because when I first read it, like I said, I genuinely hated it. Second time round, again, tab some bits. I gave it 4 stars. Second time round. So, and this is your sign also to never trust your own reviews. I've said this before on my TikTok. My reviews depend on what mood I'm in, what's going on, how I'm feeling that day. Like, I'm so temperamental. My moods, like that. So my book reviews also like that. I definitely think the first time round I was just being very, very judgy. I'm still not keen on how they met. It still annoys me that they met because she was taking a photo of a bear. But no, actually with a bear. And he sees her, obviously says like, what the fuck are you doing? You're going to get yourself killed. And she's like, oh, I want to show my followers something real. Huh? What do you mean real? You're taking a photo with a bear. So that still annoys me. And I also hate their nicknames for each other. I still can't get over Coach Thick Thighs and Fancy Face. However, those are the 2 things that I didn't like about this, hence 4 stars. So I kind of like take off half a star in my head for each thing that I didn't like. But the rest of it, absolutely loved it. West, oh my God, absolutely adore him with my life soul. And he is a cowboy. Ford is not a cowboy, he's a billionaire, but we still love him. But West is a cowboy, and my God, this man is filthy. I read a bit in this where I was like, if you've read it, you'll know. I read a bit in this where I was like, ooh. You know, what's that you know the meme? No. Well, I haven't read an Elsie Silver book in a very long time, and I forgot how spicy they are. I was getting flustered. Also, I don't really care for Skylar. I like the bit at the end. She kind of annoyed me a bit less at the end, but the whole way through, she was just... I hate to say it, but she was a pick-me. And I know everyone's going to say she had every right to be a pick-me, but being inside her head was, oh my God, so painful. And it just never ended. The whole time she just kept feeling really sorry for herself. Sometimes I say these things out loud and I realise I'm an absolute cow. But that's just my opinion. That is just my opinion. I wasn't keen on her. I wasn't keen because obviously she's a celebrity. That's not usually my type of book. Again, why I didn't like it the first time, because I didn't like the fact that it was about a celebrity, because I just don't connect. But I did a little bit towards the end. She was a bit more tolerable towards the end. The little, what are they called? Egg. I was going to say eggshells. It's not eggshells, is it? Egg droppings? What's the word? Easter eggs. Egg droppings. Oh. Yeah, the Easter eggs in this set up for Wildside. I don't know if Easter eggs is the right term. Anyway, you get what I mean. Like, they were dropping little hints for what's going to happen in the next book, same as in this, and that is why I wanted to read them. I wanted to get hyped up for Wildside, and I did. I fucking did. I'm so excited. I'm literally going to drop whatever I'm reading and pick that up the day it releases. Okay, and then we have a very unexpected 5-star read, You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hoggle, not sure. This is second chance romance. You know I love one of those. Why are you staring at me like that? Look at how my cat's staring at me. One eye open when I'm sleeping. One eye. You're creepy as fuck. She literally hates it when I speak. Yeah, this is a second chance romance. It's basically about a couple who get together. They fall in love really quickly. I think after around the 11th month mark, from what I remember, they decide to move in together and get married. They move in together, they start planning the wedding, and they soon realise that they actually can't stand each other. Like, they're pissing each other off and they're thinking, what have we done? Like, we don't even like each other. Long story short, because I could talk about this book forever because I absolutely love it. The whole motto of this was, when they were bickering and arguing, it was all because they just weren't supporting each other. They just weren't supporting each other and being there for each other. So when anything happened to either of them, they were getting annoyed at each other. I can't really explain it that well. I'm so rubbish at explaining stuff. To me, I really like this because it was very realistic, and I get people look to books for escape, and I get that. But this, to me, is what happens to so many couples. Like, instead of building each other up and supporting each other through life, you just get pissed off at the other one and you grow apart instead. Whereas if you help each other, build each other up, it can work. Because there was nothing wrong with these two. It was just kind of how they treated each other, how they got on defensive, saying, well, if he's going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you know how it can get kind of a bit toxic. They were toxic for a while, which again, I kind of love. And they basically managed to kind of come back together because they stopped giving a shit about the wedding. They basically tormented each other to try and get the other one to call off the wedding, because whoever basically called off the wedding had to pay for everything. And as soon as they started doing that, they started actually like being themselves around each other, and their jokes, like what they were doing to piss each other off, actually turned into like they started finding it funny, they started joking around, they started messing around. It was basically just, oh my god, it was so beautiful. Like, the way they just came together. Again, I feel like I'm so rubbish at explaining it, but this was just the perfect second chance romance. And like I said, it was very real, it was very realistic, and it was nice to like see a couple, when you're reading it at the start and you're thinking, oh my god, no, you're made for each other. And then throughout, like, you know, you keep reading and then they slowly just start to mess around, have fun, reunite. Oh, loved it. 5 stars, hands down. Okay, this is when it gets juicy. So I basically started the tandem read for Throne of Glass. I read these when I went to Lisbon. I wasn't sure whether the tandem read was going to be for me, because I posted it on my TikTok and a lot of people were saying, oh, I wouldn't recommend it if you're not that into the series, because I haven't been that into the series. Wait for it. So everyone was saying, oh, if you're not that into it, I'd read them separately. I'm very glad I didn't, because I think if I read this one, I would be a little bored. Not overly bored, because this is very romance heavy, which I don't mind, but there just wasn't a lot of, compared to the rest of the series, obviously there's a lot of plot. It's very plot heavy. So I think this would have just been like, I don't know. I think if I was to reread it again, I would read them separately because I know what's coming. But to keep momentum up, thank you, it was good to read them together. So let's start with this one, Empire of Storms. So if you don't know, by the way, you can basically read these at the same time because they are happening at the same time, just other parts of the world. And there's a little system you can follow online if you just look up Throne of Glass tandem read, that kind of takes you chapter by chapter of how to read it where there's no kind of crossover, you don't get spoilers, whatever. So, Empire of Storms. This was very, very good. I rated it 4.5 stars. And again, still while I was reading this, I wasn't that into the series. And I was thinking, oh my god. But even though I gave it 4.5, because there's nothing wrong with this book, it was amazing. It was full of action, it was full of plot, it was full of feelings, even though everyone told me I was going to cry at the end of this. So usually when someone tells me that, I expect someone to die. And no one died. I don't know why I sound sad about that, but I really wanted a good cry at the end of this because everyone told me I was going to cry. But it was kind of a thing where I was like, oh, this is going to be sorted. Got nothing to cry about. This is going to be sorted. I think that's a mindset that not a lot of people had. Like, everyone was crying and getting emotional, and I wish I did. I really wish I did. And the fact that I didn't cry made me think, oh my god, I've read this whole series for nothing, and I'm not going to love it as much as everybody else did. It was really good. 4.5 stars. The ending was very good. Wanted it to be a little bit sadder, personally, because everyone said I was going to bawl my eyes out. Very thick book. Same as Tower of Dawn. Thick! Also, I can tell you this now because I finished the series. None of the Throne of Glass books were 5 stars for me. I know. I'm pretty sure Kingdom of Ash is one of the highest rated books on Goodreads, and I gave it 4.5, which is still very good, but I'll explain why. I'll explain why after. And then Tower of Dawn, I gave this 3 stars, which I think was a little bit mean. It's more like 3.5. Because it was cute. This is Chaol's book, basically. And I know a lot of people don't like Chaol. I'm not really too sure why. Like, I know he's not... At the start of the books, he was a little bit problematic, a bit annoying. But he's not Tamlin, guys. Why do we hate him so much? Not a lot happened in this one. Like I said, it's just all about Chaol and his recovery, let's say, without giving any spoilers. And also about Yrene. I feel like it was more focused on Yrene, to be honest. And I do agree with people that this, to be honest, is completely unnecessary. Like, in Kingdom of Ash, this was summarised within a few lines. And I do understand why people skip this. Will I skip this on the reread? I don't know. Because it really is not that important, in my opinion. I don't know why, as well. Reading them together made it go quicker. Can't explain it. We finally moved on to Kingdom of Ash, okay? She is big, she is juicy, she is girthy. She is 1,000 pages. Although I did get through it quite quickly, which was very surprising. Okay, I can explain this a bit better now. To me, the whole of this series, apart from the start bits, as the books get bigger and bigger, to me, not much more happens that warrants those extra pages. It just gets thicker and thicker towards the end, including this one. And to me, I'd say... like that, not much happens. It's just really drawn out, which stopped me. That's what stopped me from giving it 5 stars, because at the start I was like, what? You don't need this. You can speed it up. It just dragged on a bit. I first cried, I would say it is about the quarter mark. I first cried there, which hasn't happened to me since Assassin's Blade. If you know, you know. It got to the middle bit and, you know, it kept like hyping itself up for the big war. And again, that's something that annoyed me. The war just like, it felt like it kept going. And I was expecting like one explosive scene, which did happen at the end. But before that, it was like just little bits. And I was thinking, this is really drawn out. I wanted like just one giant one to make it more like impactful. From here on out, I cried about here. And then we cried again about here. I absolutely loved this book, and it wasn't until I finished it and put it down and then kind of reflected on the whole series, I was like, oh my god. But what's nuts, and what no one told me until about halfway through, is that this whole series, so how many books is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is the 8th book. All the other books, all the 7 books lead up to this one, which I think if I knew beforehand going in, I would have enjoyed it more, because I would have known that it was building up to this. Was I kept thinking in every book, like, where is this going? I don't understand where this is going. What is happening? But if I knew it was all coming down to this bad boy, then yeah, I think I would have enjoyed it more. But finishing this and the emotions that I felt made me realise how much I do actually love this series. And I do think it will be 10 times better the second time round. Like, I'm convinced that if I read this a second time round, there will be a few books that will be 5-star. Potentially, don't hold me to that. Because you know what, basically, you know that what is happening in that book is for a specific purpose, which is for this, which I think will make it better. I do feel like this series is meant to be reread. So yeah, sadly, none of the books are 5 stars for me. But to be fair, even when I read ACOTAR, A Court of Mist and Fury was the only one that was 5 star to me, and that was because it was very romance heavy and it gave me that magical, like, giddy feeling. And this is very not a magical feeling. It's very much just rage, feminine rage, found family. Oh god, it is emotional. But yeah, ACOTAR to me is very different to this. It's, like I said, this is war heavy, plot heavy, less romance. ACOTAR is very romance heavy, which I can understand then why some people prefer Throne of Glass and then some people prefer ACOTAR, because I am a romance girly through and through, but the war scene in this was very good. Although towards the end it felt like it really wrapped up very quickly, but whatever. And then finally, this book caught me by surprise so much. I did tab it. I went into this thinking it was a rom-com. I cried 6 times. 6 times. I cried more at this than Kingdom of Ash. However, that is because this is the reason why I cried to this is very personal to me. That's all I'll say. The reason I gave it 4.5 and not a 5, although I feel like I might change it, I was just very annoyed yesterday when I finished this, was because there is no trigger warnings in this book. You go into it thinking it's a rom-com, and yeah, it is, but it has a very dark side plot. And it doesn't even say anything on the back either about that. I wasn't expecting to have my heart broken like this. I don't really care about trigger warnings. Like, most of the time, especially if I'm going into a dark romance, but then I think when you're going into a dark romance, you kind of know what to expect. But with this, it is advertised as a rom-com. Everyone speaks about it as if it's a rom-com. No one talks about the dark side of it that fucked me up. I was reading it and I finished it and I got to the dark bits. I literally I stared out into space, and I finished this very late at night as well, which I think didn't help with my emotions, but it really hit a nerve. And like I said, I'm not triggered by a lot of things at all, but I think this was because it was so out of the blue. If there was trigger warnings in the start, I feel like I could have prepped for it, but there's nothing at the start, and it just kept coming. The blows just kept coming, and I just kept crying, and it was never ending. And I got to the end of it and I put the book down and I was like, what? This is now one of my favourite books. Hands down, if there was a trigger warning, it would be 5 stars. I would recommend for everyone to read this. However, just like I said, just be prepared going in. There is lots of talk of depression, suicide, suicidal thoughts. That very dark thing in a lot of people's heads. So just be mindful of that going in. I forgot one. I always forget the one I read on Kindle. Okay, last but not least, I read The Full Risk by Abby Jimenez. I got this with Prime because when you have a Prime membership, you get reads early. So I think this comes out in March, but when you have Prime, you get certain books for free early. So this is just a little novella. It was something like 80 pages, and guess what? I rated it 5 stars. I've never read an Abby Jimenez book before, and this was 5 stars. This was very deep and meaningful for a little novella. It was kind of like a little Valentine's Day special, but again, it was deep. And I keep thinking, if this was like a 300, 400 page book, I think this would have been 6 stars. They're basically neighbours who live across from each other. He's got his own issues. She's got her own issues. She's basically being stalked by some guy. He finds that out straight at the start. And he wants to do everything he can to protect her. The whole book is her basically wanting to be able to handle the situation on her own. And let's say by the end of it, she does. She does. And it's just amazing. And also, it was so funny. I laughed so many times. So it's a cute little Valentine's Day special. I think this might be one that I like reread every year. Just at Valentine's, just for a cute little... Because I love reading my books to the season. So I will always read summer books in summer. I will always read something that's set in spring. I will always read something... I was going to say I read Valentine's books, but I read romance, so technically they're all Valentine's. But this was set, actually. Like, they had a Valentine's Day. So yeah, that was another 5 star for me. I can't... My 5 stars are weird, because how can I rate a 80-page novella 5 stars and Kingdom of Ash 4.5? But it's just that feeling that you get where there's nothing wrong with it. It's absolute perfection. There was not one moment where anything was bad or you were bored, anything like that. And Kingdom of Ash, I was a bit bored at the start. That is my reading wrap up for February. I have so many books to read in March, and there are so many books coming out. There's Wild Side, there's the Strawberry Pancake House. I think that's it. There's one by Lucy Score. I think it's called Story of My Life. I'm very excited to read those. But thank you so much for watching, as always, and I will see you in the next video.